Joe Biden has warned that a direct conflict between Russia and NATO would amount to World War III.
In the latest defence of not setting up a no-fly zone in Ukraine, he says, though, that the US will defend every inch of NATO territory. He must strive to prevent World War III.
Well, let's talk to US political commentator Scottie Nell Hughes. Good to see you this morning, Scottie. Look, what do you make of the rhetoric? I know you're not particularly a Biden fan, are you? But what do you make of the rhetoric here?
Well, good morning. And I just want to say I really appreciate the conversation that I was able to overhear of Marianne in this last guest. I think those are the type of conversations that we need to be having in the world. That's the type of words that need to be spoken. And rhetoric, bringing in things like World War III, especially from the leader of a strong country like the United States or the UK that would bring that in, doesn't help the situation, because I think right now all of our conversations, all of the language being used from leaders involved of those countries should be geared towards one ultimate goal, which is peace within the area. And unfortunately, we're not seeing that after, 18 days of it. And now the United States overnight has now had an attack on our consulate in Iran or in Iraq from the Iranians. So now we have our own new issue that the White House isn't responding back to. So obviously things on the global scene right now are continuing to heat up, continuing to escalate, and adding in the threat of bringing in World War III, which we all know in those situations, it's the people the people that suffer, not necessarily the politicians, does not help bring and achieve the ultimate goal, which should be peace.
How is this working out for Biden out there, Scottie? Because in a time of conflict, some leaders do incredibly well. They can sort of bask in a sort of a reflected glory in a way, if they can, especially this is a war by proxy effectively with the West. Is Biden doing well in the eyes of the American public? What are the optics on it?
Well, right now, unfortunately, even going into this, we already saw the average American suffering, whether we're talking about gas prices or the cost of living. But unfortunately, over the last 2.5 weeks, we are now seeing the record high amount of gas prices here in the United States going into the heavy holiday season, going into getting to work. And we're talking, it's not just like $1 or $2. This is having severe impacts on family budgets, on business budgets, on our trucking industry. And so it's not going well, even domestically here at home. When you're talking about gas prices being $5 to $6, when on average at this point, even just a year ago, we were looking at close to $2, $2.40. We're seeing almost double, if not 60 to 70% more. That can take a major toll, especially when you're already dealing with an economic situation of high inflation. Obviously, there is a crunch right now with the banks. There's a shortage of supply as we still have not fixed our supply kinks coming off the pandemic. There's a lot of issues, and this is not stemming from, this is not helping Biden, except in the fact that right now Americans are rallying, whether you're on the right or the left, rallying behind this cry of bringing, helping the Ukrainians. The question is, does it help the Ukrainians by continuing an ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine? Or is it better if we start actually as the West, instead of uniting the East, which is what is happening right now, making this an East versus West war, maybe we actually try to have conversations to bring real peace to the ground? Because like I said, it's the people in Ukraine that are suffering right now. It's the people in Russia that are going to suffer from these continued sanctions. But the politicians don't really care about that with their rhetoric.
But is that a fair assessment? Because certainly over here, people have been talking. I mean, President Macron seems to be permanently on the phone to President Putin, and the German Chancellor joined in that call yesterday. And look, they've come out of it saying Putin doesn't want peace at this stage. He's not prepared to talk anymore about this. So, I mean, what are the other options that someone like Biden could deal with?
Well, see, and that's what I think also a part of the issue is that we're not really getting a clear channel of communication going right now. Because, yes, and President Macron, obviously, the German chancellor, they've been a part of these conversations even prior, saying, let's stop this before it starts. Unfortunately, you also have the Prime Minister of Israel talking with Russia. And at the same time, I don't think the demands from Russia have changed from even prior to it. All they're asking for is Ukraine to remain neutral, to not join NATO, which would actually allow NATO to have full control of the entire side of Russia's border. And they're asking for the killing in the Donbass region to stop of those that want to be separatist and to recognize those two states. Those were really the two issues going into it. And at the last part I saw 5 days ago, the Kremlin's last official record was this will stop. The last bullet will stop flying if we can still agree to those terms. And there's been this back and forth between Zelensky and Ukraine saying, yes, let's do it. Unfortunately, something continues to almost stop that dialogue by happening. I think, as much as I appreciate what the Russians and Germans are doing, let's get Zelensky, let's get Putin on the phone. Let them talk it out. It's their two countries. It's their two, it's those two are the ones that should broker peace, and the outside should just encourage it. It's these outside factors that, unfortunately, I feel like sometimes are turning up the heat.
I think a lot of us share that frustration, Scottie, from the outside. We just think just communication has surely got to be a way to find some sort of resolution. There's a big conversation going on here today in the UK about whether Brits should be taking Ukrainian refugees into our houses and the government subsidising that. America is clearly a much further away place from Ukraine than the UK is. But is that something that's in the media there, in the narrative at all, that American families might welcome Ukrainian refugees?
Well, I will go along with my colleague Marianne there and the conversation she was having. Yes, that is something that's happening here in the U.S., but the U.S. as well as the U.K. is known for having refugees. And so what should make the difference between Ukrainians or those from Somalia, those happening in Sudan, everything that's happening within Afghanistan and Syria currently right now? And here in the United States, we still have a major problem happening in our southern border. So those sorts of things right now are issues that I think we should be concerned about. But here's the thing. Let's try not to get to that point. I think the fact when you're moving people into homes, whether they're Russian oligarchs or other members welcome in, let's try to avoid it. That's making it sound like this is going to be a long going. And unfortunately, we do have a history in this world of having 20-year wars like we just saw with the end of Afghanistan. Let's not create that type of scenario where we can move into that. Let's actually encourage more peace and people to stay in their own homes and make them feel safe in their own homes in Ukraine. Because I guarantee that's where they want to be. They don't want to come over into these other countries. They want to stay within their area. So let's try to promote that instead of talking about World War III happening like the United States president just did.
OK, Scottie Nell Hughes, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.